Hi, and welcome to the 12th House Podcast. I'm Michelle Pelizon, your host and the head witch in charge here at Holisticism, and I'm really, really excited about today's episode. I had the absolute pleasure of talking to my genius, incredible teacher, Pamela Pietro. Pam is the Associate Arts Director and the Academic Director at NYU Tisch, and she's this tiny little fireball of energy. I think we're probably the same size. You know, I'm like 5'1". She's maybe a little taller than me. And Pam, you'll hear in this call, because I basically just like tell her how much I love her, but Pam definitely changed my life. And she was one of those teachers. She is one of those teachers who just shows up for their students in a way that is more than above and beyond, where you're like, I can't believe that you have the spaciousness in your life and the generosity of spirit to dedicate so much of yourself to helping others and shepherding other people and believing in people and also having a life of your own. I'm just like endlessly impressed with her, especially as I get older and I build a community around myself and I mentor others. I'm just so impressed. And I wanted to talk to Pam because she's an incredible teacher. She teaches modern dance, not just at NYU, but around the world. And because she melds somatic practices and somatic experiencing and psychology and spirituality into her work, into her dance, obviously, because that's her modality, but also in the way that she connects with people in the world. And I'm just so honored that she was down to be on this podcast because she really changed my life. And even I think that you'll be able to hear in this conversation what a bright light she is. And we talk about a couple things that are sort of modern dance lingo. So I'll clue you in on them. Every class in like downtown modern dance. So that's what we practice at NYU because you know, modern dance has lots of different variants and different teachers and different structures. And there are some people that have completely unstructured modern dance, and that's super cool too. But I guarantee you, if you walk into a studio and ask for a modern dance class, people will kind of look at you and bat their eyes and be like, okay, but what kind? There's so many different styles. There's so many different teachers. There's so many different perspectives. And at Tisch, one of the main methodologies that's taught is downtown modern dance and release method and Skinner technique. And we also learn a little Cunningham too. And I'm sure there was some days that we did Horton. I just didn't, I think I might have skipped those days. We mostly do postmodern, modern dance. And pretty much every class starts with an X. So you start laying on the ground in an X position, your arms sort of like out above your head and your legs sort of in a wide V. And you start here and you just lay on the ground and you feel your body sort of like energetically aligning with the floor underneath you, releasing into the ground, feeling held by the floor and just noticing what's there, what's coming up in the body. And it's, you know, if you've ever taken a yoga class, you might have had a teacher that gave you these prompts, maybe when you were in Shavasana. But this is how we start class. It was just checking in and feeling into what feels open, what feels closed, what feels stuck, what feels sticky, what actually doesn't have any energy inside of it today, and how can I begin to use those areas of my body? Because when we're dancing, we are making choices, and we want to have as many choices as possible. We want to have as many options to choose from as we can. And so if I'm not in awareness of how my pinky finger feels, then that means that my pinky finger is no longer part of my choice making. And that's going to limit my mobility, and it's also going to limit my artistic freedom. Also, like, we are just here as artists to be more human. So I want to feel into, this is my perspective, I want to feel into all of my humanness and as often as I possibly can. And so we lay on an X on the ground, and we spend a lot of time on the ground in the beginning of a modern dance class. We, especially at NYU, sometimes an hour laying on the ground and moving in the space on the floor and just kind of articulating through the body, finding more mobility, finding more information, finding sometimes things like trauma and emotion and feeling. And it's a safe place. Your X becomes this home base, this place where you can get to know your body in a different way. For so many of us, especially dancers, we grew up in front of a mirror. To look at ourselves in the mirror all day long is not enjoyable. It's not fun all the time. And when you're laying on in an X on the floor, looking up at the ceiling, you don't need to think about how your body looks. You just get to experience how it feels and just notice your perception, right? That's all that we're really doing. We're just perceiving. There's very little actual truth in what we see, in what we perceive, right? It's just information. It's not like the absolute truth. So how I look in the mirror isn't the absolute truth. How I feel on the ground isn't the absolute truth. And there is opacity and a lack of clarity with both of those things. And that's okay. That's kind of like a metaphor for life, right? I'm just seeing things from one perspective, and I could be missing a lot of information because I'm only seeing them from this one perspective. But right now, this is the perspective I get. So I'm going to do my best to get as much information as I possibly can, so I can make the best choices for myself moving forward. So we lay in an X on the ground. I'm getting a little philosophical about this. Sorry, but it's a really important position for dancers and for, I think, anyone who wants to get to know themselves a little bit better. And this is where your practice begins. It's often where your practice ends at the end of the class, where you'll kind of warm or cool down and just get back to yourself and resettle your body. And there's definitely healing that happens when you're in your X and you're exploring that space. So we talk about that a couple times in this call. And we also talk about positive thought, which is how Pam begins every single class that she teaches. One of my favorite things about, at Tisch, we would have a rotation. So every quarter we would get a new teacher, and basically we'd start our days with ballet and modern for, I think our classes were an hour and a half or 2 hours. I can't remember at this point because I'm old. No, we started at 9 and we ended at 12:15. So I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. So maybe 2 hours. So we would have a new teacher for ballet and a new teacher for modern every quarter. And so when we'd call that a rotation, and when we'd rotate into a new teacher's class, it was always an interesting sort of situation to see how they decided to start class and how they ran their studio, right? And Pam's rotation was always my favorite. I got to have her, luckily, I think 3 or 4 times when I was in school. And she starts every single class with everyone sitting in a circle, and she goes around and takes roll, and she asks, what's your positive thought of the day? And sometimes your positive thought would be, I got to drink a cup of coffee in between, ballet and now, or I landed my triple pirouette in ballet, or I got a great night's sleep, or I'm just happy to be here with all of you beautiful people, or something even more exciting. Maybe I got a job offer, or I'm going on an amazing audition, or my piece got selected to be in the spring concert, whatever. And sometimes it would be really simple, just I'm happy to be alive. My positive thought is that I'm here. And sometimes our positive thought circles would go really fast. We'd zoom through them and get to dancing. And other times we talk about in this call, they would take the whole class period where we'd be just sitting and talking and sometimes crying and being with each other. And I always admired how intuitively she navigated that, just how she could check in and know, all these young people in this moment, what they really need right now is just someone to witness them and to be with them and to see them and to let them have their emotions and their feelings, which maybe they've never had access to before in this way. And I can definitely say that she changed my life, and I know that she changed the lives of many of my friends in big and small ways. But I'm just really grateful that I get to interview her today to talk a little bit about art and well-being and teaching and perception, right? And choice, and how in this moment, there's so little that we have control over, it feels like, when we're inside of something like COVID, but also when we're inside of life. We can't control all of the outcomes, try as we might. And we also have no idea where we're going to end up. And I think that something that the reason that dance is my first language, and I think the reason that I care so much about wellness and well-being, is that art and well-being don't feel that different to me, just like politics and wellness don't feel that different to me. They feel like different sides of the same crystal, right? Just we're holding these things up to the light. We're holding our humanity up to the light, and we're looking at it through these different lenses. And some lenses are more attractive to us than others. Some of us are artists and makers. Others of us look at life through the spiritual lens. Even more other than us look at it through the hedonistic lens, which I'm totally a hedonist. I'm all for that. But we're just trying to muddle through this thing that's life and take in as much information as we can and make the best next step, the best next choice for ourselves about where to go from here. So I'm really happy that Pam is on the podcast today, and she has some requests for the audience. So listen, if you are someone who's at a think tank, hit Pam up. I think that she's a true gem and delight, and you'll really enjoy working with her. And with that, let's just pop into the episode. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Mimi.
As I said already, I'm so excited to be talking to you. I had a dream about you last night, and just getting excited about recording this podcast episode with you. I had all these recovered memories come back to me about my time at NYU and you and your little ray of sunshine. So thanks for being here with us.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I was saying earlier, I'm just so honored to be asked to do something like this. And, I follow you on Instagram, and I, kind of know. And so it's yes, I want to do this, of course.
Yeah, I feel like we're mutually each other's fangirl.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's no doubt.
So what has teaching been like during COVID at Tisch? Are you teaching from home? Are you going into the studios? What does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So when COVID first hit and they closed down the school, basically I taught in this room that I'm sitting in right now, and I hated it, and it was terrible. But, it
was the worst.
It was the worst, and it was so uncomfortable, and my body hurt so much, and it was really hard. It was really hard because it also felt like, how am I getting this stuff across? And they became increasingly, it deteriorated their spirits. And
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was really hard. So going into the fall semester, we worked really hard all summer long we are in person, and we've been in person since September.
Whoa. Oh,
yes.
I just got chills.
Yes.
That must be that must be such a relief for your students and for you, I imagine. Yes. But Tisch Dance is such a special place, and you are a huge component of making it so special and safe. I can say that from personal experience of just when you walk in the doors, Tisch is on 2nd Avenue. For anyone who doesn't know, Tisch Dance has its own building separate from the rest of Tisch.
Really separate.
really not on campus, far away. And okay guys, we get it.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah.
In this old vintage building is there still a hand-operated elevator happening?
We have real elevators now. Yeah.
Well, there was a hand-operated elevator for a very long time until into the mid-aughts, I would say. And it's the safe little cocoon of you can be your weird dancer self here, and we can just move and shake and scream and do all the things that we need to do and make. And it's so special. And you, I was so scared to go to NYU, and you were the first teacher who really made me recognize how intrinsically tied my personal safety in my body and my ability to be a dancer and an artist were connected. And for me, that was really where I started to understand well-being and wellness. And my favorite thing that you used to do, I don't know if you still do it, is starting class with a positive thought.
Still do it.
Do you ever think about how many lives you've saved just by doing that?
No. And what's interesting is that I never really know the impact. I really never know the impact until I run into you on the street randomly and you tell me, or, I'll have these experiences, or someone will say, oh, I'm teaching now and I'm using that. And I'm like, okay, that is the best gift I could ever ask for. So for me, it's funny, the positive thought thing started because I never understood first of all, I never understood what a practice meant. I never understood how to go from your life into the dance studio, and that the old verbiage of, oh, you leave it at the door. How the hell do you do that? I never knew how to do that.
What are you talking about?
It's like, okay, but wait, this is like a part of me. So it's like, and I'm an artist and I'm supposed to be using all of these tools. So how do I do that? So that's also why I created it, because I needed to figure out a way, the pathway from the door to the space, because I think that the dancing space is the most important space. And so how do you do that when your life is so full and so rich, and you've just had a fight with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your partner, your whatever, and now you're expected to, okay, now I'm going to be like in my practice. It's like, what does that mean? So it's a way for students to go, wait a second, there are all these wonderful things that are going on in my life. I just need like a moment to think about them and then to speak about it. So it's like, once you take that out and put it out into you've already conversed with the universe once you've done that. And then it kind of sets you into a pattern. So I still do it. And when I travel all over the world and teach and make work and et cetera, or give lectures, I do it there in any language, in any because I just think it's really important. So so I still do that. Yes. Long story to say, yes, I still do that.
No, that's amazing. And I can remember being so grateful for you, and just the fact that you opened that space up, and not that you were asking people to be to embrace toxic positivity of how can we bright side this horrible situation we're in, but just have a moment of oh, I'm here, a little bit more presence.
Yeah.
And I remember some classes where that's all we would do
for
the 90-minute hours, or for the 90-minute session was okay, we're just going to be in a circle and be with each other. And to me, that's the point of art, is to expand our humanity and to understand the human experience and our empathy for each other. And that's part of why I love well-being too, because I think they're similar in that way. How can we be more human and come back more to ourselves? That's really what we're trying to do here. And there are so many tools and pathways to do that. I was just always so grateful when you would let us do a full 90-minute session of positive thinking.
I know. And the fact that I still have this job is Yeah. I mean, it's not just about the movement. There's, I mean, my gosh, that's only such a small part of it. And I believe that, and I will always believe that, that it's so much more about who are these young people that are sitting in front of me, and why did they come to this school? And I knew that you were not from New York, you come very far away. So it's now I'm here in this place, in this huge city, and trying to sort of understand what New York is about and understand what this big university is about. It's a lot. I just think it's a lot. And so I have great compassion for that. So I always like to hear.
I'm still in good, I mean, London, who was in your class and who was my roommate, she lives down the street from me here in LA. Joanna Tabanak's coming to my wedding, and, we're all still, friends and text each other. And we talk about that all the time of Pam's class saved our lives. And it's so interesting to that sort of liminal space of college, right? When you're emerging from childhood and into adulthood, and especially as artists, you sometimes have a lot to say, but you don't exactly know how to say it, or the tenor or the tone that you want it to come out in. And that just period of self-actualization is so, so, so important. And having teachers and guides who can walk you through that process and not keep your work strictly academic, which I feel a lot of the art world and the dance world can feel just very, very academic and rigorous, which is great, but also getting to the root of okay, your technique's awesome. Cool. Love that for you. But why? Why are you here? To what end? What are you here to say? And how do you do that and bring that out of your students?
It's a process because there are some students who will go on the journey with you and there's some that will not. And that's fine. Everybody has their way. But for me, it's about the relationship, right? It's about the relationship that you build with this person when they're 17 or 18 and they're in your class. And then when they graduate at 20 or 21. So it's like those 3 years for me are the most important time. Because if you talk to someone in their first year and then you have a conversation with them in their third year, they will say completely opposite things almost 150% of the time. And I love that because that means that they've taken their journey seriously. It's also the combination of what they're learning in the academics, and then what they're learning in their art making. And so I always find that those two can combust in such a really lovely way. So I do find that that really does help because the rigor of the academics pushes them in a certain kind of way. And then in the rigor of the artistry pushes them in a certain kind of way. And then it's up to them to make the connection. And sometimes I will help them make the connection by I have a friend, a coach who does this for me, where it's like, let's get rid of the cobwebs, right? So all I do is just say, well, what about this? And then how do we connect that with that? And I just listen, and then I try to hear what they're saying in a really deep way, and always with a positive undertone, and to go, oh yeah, but see, there's this. It's that thing that other people see us in different ways that we don't see ourselves. It's that. It's basically that. And that all the things that they are is beautiful. And it's just allowing them the opportunity and the time for them to kind of go, oh, I don't quite understand this part of it. And then I just kind of go, well, what about this and this and that? And then I just pull it together for them. So, I love doing that because that, again, it's another way of teaching. It's another way of being mindful about their lives and mindful about my responsibility in that. There's a deep responsibility in the way that I enact with them and interact with them. So that part of the job is awesome.
Are you doing more of that, or do you feel like you're doing more teaching these days to bigger groups?
Well, actually, we're teaching in much smaller groups. I'm teaching, we have a couple, I teach 2 days a week, 2 classes in a row. The classes are an hour and 15 minutes, 1 teacher, 8 students, 1 musician.
Whoa.
So that's what we've been doing, Nini, since September.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that's
my gosh.
Yeah, that's how we've been able to be in person when other universities are just now doing that. But we've been doing that. And the students have been performing solos, duets, or trios only.
Wow.
And they have to be in their pod. So let's say you and London were roommates. You two would be in a pod. And so that's because I'm associate chair. And so part of the work that I've been doing since last summer is helping create this whole system.
Oh my gosh, Pam.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been really, and it's been working. I mean, it's amazing. Plus also NYU we have these huge Zoom carts in every dance studio. So if a student, so in the fall, we had many students who decided to stay home and be remote. So they were still able to take class and participate. And we get tested every 9 days. Wow. Students, staff, administrators, if you're showing up on campus, you have to be tested. And we do this daily screener on our phone to show that that you can go in. It's that whole thing, when you go get your nails done or something, your temperature, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So this is the other part of the work that I've been doing, which has been more than the teaching part. Yeah. Also, the connecting with the students, I'm trying to even do that more, but it's gotten a little harder because our time together is much shorter and they're not dancing as much as when you were taking class. The classes used to be 20 to 25 people. Now we're talking 8 people. So this is a whole different, and of course everybody's masked and, we give them mask breaks and wash their hands breaks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mask break. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But I mean, part of me is oh, wow, that must be really challenging for everyone. But the other part of me is parameters are what you need in art to make beautiful work and to make important work.
Yeah.
So like, it's kind of cool that you have these really strict parameters that you have to operate within. And it's like, okay, well, what can we make out of this? And I remember after the 2016 election, I think you and I were emailing or talking somewhere, and I was like, but what's going to happen to the artists? And you said, well, this in times of struggle, this is when the best art gets made. And so I think about that a lot. Actually, I think about it quite a bit whenever I'm struggling of like, well, Pam said this is when the best stuff happens. So, okay. I guess I'm going to believe her. She's never been wrong before.
Well, I'm often wrong. But I also will say that when COVID first hit, and it was, as everybody was, we were just trying to understand what this thing was. And in some ways, it reminded me when the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that because I remember being in 2nd Avenue in the dance building when the second plane.
No.
Yeah. And
I just got full body chills.
Yeah. And I remember thinking like, first of all, it was that kind of thing of like, wait, what happened? Like you didn't quite understand what was going on. And then of course the realization of it and everything happened. So when COVID happened, it was kind of that same thing of like, okay, wait, what is this thing? And like, what are we supposed to do now? And so I remember having that same feeling. And in that time, of course, all I wanted to do was just shelter. I just wanted to like do the things I was supposed to do. And then I just wanted to be in my apartment and shelter. And I found it actually annoying when people were like, so what are you working on? And I was like, okay, you need to back up because I don't even know what's going on. Right. And the other thing is that we were trying to figure out how do we move forward with this? So there was all these administrative skills and administrative things that were going on. And so to like go like, oh, I'm going to make a solo about this just felt like, okay.
Right. And poor taste.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah. Not yet. Exactly. And also, around this whole COVID thing, I really do believe that, the universe knows what it's doing. I am such a believer in the universe. And so it was all meant to be in the way that it's supposed to be. And so I really just connected to that. And for me, that has helped a lot. And I know that other people might get angry to hear that. But for me, I just feel like there are things that have happened because of COVID that have actually been quite good. And I think as we move through this, it'll continue to reveal itself. But I just believe in the universe.
I feel like what other choice is there?
I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to be mad all the time and like stomp around and like,
Well, I mean, when you go through hardship or grief or anything that in the moment feels like this is the worst possible thing that can be happening to me, I don't know. I feel like time and time again, I learn it's not. It's actually like maybe it's the slingshot into something greater. And I'm just so small, I'm so small. My perception of the world and how things work is so minuscule. How could I possibly extrapolate the meaning of this and like see it right now in this moment?
Yeah, I completely agree. I am like, a pea in the pod. And, it's like, I'm here, I'm willing to learn. I'm trying to do the work that I'm supposed to be doing on this planet. And yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Man.
I'm just here laying in my X, just trying to do my thing.
Finding my breath and like, trying to like push this shit forward on some level, I mean, I really do. I just feel like it's like the one moment at a time, and also trying to, think for myself of like, well, what are my dreams and what are my next steps and what are the things I'm, so this time has also given me some lovely moments of dreaming. So I've been enjoying that part of it.
What are your dreams? Because you're such a dream holder for others. What are your dreams? I
just feel that I'm really loving my kind of like leadership role that I have right now. It's given me a newfound sense of confidence. And it's also demonstrated things that I never thought that I'd be really good at. I also have taken the hardships that I've come in and through, and I'm really kind of activating that energy and noticing the learned lessons of those and going, oh yeah, I can see how that was, or I can see how that conversation turned in that kind of way. Or, you know, I'm also really thinking a lot about like my voice and how I want to be sort of impeccable with my word and to be my most authentic self. I do think that the teaching part of it is still in there, and being able to see all sides of the picture. You know, I would love to be in some sort of like think tank something. I think I would just like love that, you know, with individuals that are, maybe they're not even artists or whatever, but to be a think tank for like a project or like a system that's been running in a certain kind of way, and then like how to change and transfer that. Or, you know, it's like not looking at the box in just these four corners, but like, well, what about through it and underneath it? And then what happens if you go through that crack, you know, then what? So I don't know. I'm super fascinated by that. And I don't even know what that means, but the think tank thing has been in my psyche for a bit of time.
Oh, I have someone I want to introduce you to after this call then.
Yay. Good.
Oh, that's really exciting. It reminds me, we launched something called Visionary in Residence at Holisticism, which is an incubator / residency for the next 12 months for creators and innovators in the wellness and well-being space who are making it more accessible and inclusive. So we had like 750 applications and we picked 7 people. I know, it's crazy. And so we've got these 7 amazing makers. And actually one of them, Ogemdi, is a choreographer. She's a choreographer and a birth worker. Wow. And she's going to do they're all working on an idea or project for the next year. And her sort of theme is grief and working through grief. And she's thinking of doing a series of solos, and it's going to be really cool. But I'll also introduce you to her because I think you would love to get to know her. She's amazing.
Yes, please.
Yeah, but we do need, like, I've been really lucky to be part of some incubator programs myself, and we need more creative and strategic thinkers in those spaces who have different life experiences, because it's absolutely necessary to, like, you know, if you're looking at something, hold it up to the light and view it from all the different sides and angles and dimensions, not just from this one perception that we get or this one, I don't know, vantage point.
Exactly. I mean, I think it would be amazing to be in a room with like makers, artists, scientists, physicians. Like, I would love to do something like that where, you know, because everybody's mind works in a certain kind of way, and the learning, I mean, I just think I would learn immense amount. And I really.
Well, and you teach so much too.
Exactly. And there's that.
Like, there's also, like, there's so much. I mean, let me just say, in case it wasn't abundantly clear, Pam is the best teacher I've ever had in my entire life. And as someone who is obsessed with learning and taking classes and courses and certifications and all the things, like, you are the best teacher I've ever had. And I don't think anyone can top you. So you're gold star for you. But something that I loved about your classes is that you were always stretching yourself too, of like taking in different ideas, theories, industries even, and weaving that into how we moved in space. And I mean, psychology seemed like a major point that you were probably studying and bringing into our classes. Somatics obviously go hand in hand with dance, but you are so just like dialed on that. How do you make sense of like all the information in the world and weave it into class? And yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, it's really important to me. And actually, when I'm teaching, again, it's like that part of it is so important to me. The movement and the things that come out of my body physically, that's fine. That's good. But, you know.
Take it or leave it.
But, you know, also, like, I'm getting older, and it does get harder, and I'm trying to stay abreast of, like, what does this body feel, you know. Okay, so in response to your question, I do quite a bit of reading. I've been doing a lot of reading since George Floyd, a lot. And, you know, I'm reading my grandmother's hands now. I just finished Caste.
I love that book.
I'm just finished Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. I've read, so I'm looking at my things, The Vanishing Half, Me and My White Supremacy. I mean, like, so those books have been really infiltrating my dance making and art making as they should. I'm also learning a ton about our history and our U.S. history, which has been taught in such a really disastrous in some ways. You know, as I'm kind of like reading about the other ways of looking about our history. So I've been thinking a lot about that. I also, you know, I have like my yoga teachers. I have my Pilates people that I follow, and I do meditation with a woman who I adore. And so I take from that too. And sometimes it's just like a daily thing of like, okay, well, what came up for me this morning? And what is the things I've been thinking about? And I took this Dream Builders course with my friend, Crystal Brown, who I adore, and we've been friends forever. And I took a lot of stuff from that, and that has also been inside of my teaching.
Cool.
So yeah, so I'm super interested in, you know, this information that goes out in, because I'm so working from inside out. And so I want to bring that to the classroom and to the studio and to the space, because it's not just about the movement, because your artistry is your artistry. Whether you are like, you know, you got a degree in dance and maybe you didn't really dance, but you went on to something else, it's still there. It's still part of your history. So there's artists in all of us. And I think that I believe that being an artist is the learning and the being involved in the depth of this kind of information. So it is spiritual. It is psychological. It is somatic. It is anatomical. It has all of these bits of information. Also, you know, I follow a lot of my students on Instagram who have been out doing incredible things. So, you know, I also go, oh, okay, I like that. I'm going to take, you know what I mean? It's like, there are those things too, you know?
Yeah.
There's a woman named Megan Roop, who's this like trainer.
I love Megan. I know. Megan's crushing it.
She's totally crushing it. She's moving to LA. I just found out. Yeah. So,
amazing.
Yeah, so that's really great. So I kind of follow her and I watch her like things, and I don't know. I love to see what people have done with their lives, and to know that it's like a life lived, right? It's like one thing brings you to the next thing, to the next thing. I mean, for me, that's just universe. That's just what the universe does. And I also really try to get the students to understand that they are constantly connecting with the universe, whether they know it or not. And once they are like in their X or sharing their positive thought or taking that first deep breath of the day and going, okay, what is my practice about today? What is my intention for my practice? They are now conversing with the universe. And they're shifting their neurological system. They're shifting the cellular system. All of that is happening while they're breathing in their X. And it's like the simplicity of that, because their lives are so complex now. They've got phones, they've got instant gratification, they've got instant information. You know, it's all there. You know, it's all there. And so it's also a time that I can try to get them to slow down and to get their systems to slow down so they can take in information in a deeper kind of way.
Yeah, we so often don't get the chance to, in this digital age where we're expected to respond instantaneously and have like the most perfect response to what's happening in the world. Kind of like what you were saying about with COVID, when people are asking you, well, what are you making? It's like, let me just process this experience. Like, Jesus. You know, we're so, we have to be on all the time in the world, and we don't often get those moments of deep work, which is just being with one singular idea or focus for just a couple of hours, which sounds absolutely insane when we say it out loud, that we don't give ourselves even a few hours to just collect ourselves or muddle through something. And the fact that you're giving people the time and the space to do that, I feel like is intrinsically connected to their well-being and has to contribute to their well-being. And so I think that we're actually going to lose that skill, to be totally honest with you. I don't think that many people knew how to do that before social media, but now that we have these mini computers that are pinging us all day long, it's hard for me. I imagine it's still hard for you sometimes, to just disconnect. And that is, to me, I get really freaked out of like, wow, this is really going to mess with this is going to contribute to our neuroses in a big way. If we can't just like learn how to self-soothe and also learn how to process. And that's the thing. That's like what art is, right? Art is processing, is the experience of processing something and like working through it and metabolizing it and spitting something out that maybe is half baked or maybe feels almost completed, but that's the point of it. It's not to just make something beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see it in people's daily activities and in their lives, in the way that they work through the world. It's like, when are you finding the time? You know, when is your X moment? You know, I mean, when can you just lie in your X? You know, it is the most gratifying experience, I have to say. And you know that.
It really is. It really is. I did it the other day when I was having a moment. I was like, oh, the X, it's safe here.
It's like a safe room. It's like, there's safety here. No one can talk to me. No, everybody just leave me alone. Yeah. And it's just also a thing about grounding. You know, like in yoga, they talk about when your feet are on the ground, you know, it's like, and I teach my students about their feet a lot because they're the things that we use the most and the things we take care of the least. And so, you know, it's like, let's understand, I teach them about anatomically, but also about like, it's like grounding your whole body into the earth for like 5 minutes. You know, these are just the things that I hope they take with them.
Oh, they do. Trust me. My first day of school, you walked past my big feet and you said, you got big feet. You're going to be a good modern dancer. I'd never done modern before. I was like this little bunhead. I'm pretty sure I had like a leotard and tights on, you know, in modern class. And I was like, okay, this lady just said I'm going to be good at this. So hope she's right. Took a couple years, but yeah, I got there.
I sure do remember that. I was like, I can't believe I said that. I did. I was like, oh my God, you remind me of my friend Jennifer Nugent. Yes, she used to be. And they're like, oh, okay.
It's not, you're not wrong. I'm 5'1" and I have size 10.5 feet. I have giant feet.
I love that.
So for your students, when they're coming back to, when they're learning about an X for the first time or like coming to somatics, now that you have this new information or you're learning new information about like perhaps with the trauma of being in the world as a person of color or someone who has a marginalized identity. I'm sure a ton of your students also identify as non-binary.
Yeah, there are many of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just the trauma that we store in our bodies from before we can even remember, that's sometimes not even ours, right? Like epigenetic trauma. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that in the way that you teach? Because it's so, what you do is so body focused. It's body and mind focused.
Yeah. Boy, this has been a lot of the learning. You know, this has been a lot of like, how do I, as this like one person in this space, you know, transfer this knowledge, right? Transfer this information, create a sense of equality, create a community with these 8 students that are standing in front of me. And so all of that is going on while I'm trying to like teach a drop swing. Okay. So that's the funny part about it.
Drop swings are hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, while I'm teaching the material, I'm also going, okay, my body is different than this body. All of our bodies are so different. So I have to use all of my cueing and my verbiage to go from this space to that space. That stuff in between, for me, is the most important part. What comes out of me and goes to them is the most important part. And so everybody is individualized. I give everybody an individualized moment, one-on-one we have with each other inside of that space. And, you know, now we can't touch or anything like that. So my words are very much more meaningful. And it's like, there's always these moments where I have to stop and I have to make sure that's exactly what I want to say. And I see like the depth and importance of that. So it is a mindful practice. It's also a very empathic way of which I enter their space, and compassion and rigor, so it's all of these things that are combined, and how I go about really digging into each person's way of going about it. And that's the part that's really fun for me. That's the part that I love the most, is because I want to make sure that everybody knows that they can do it, that they belong there, and that there's no mistake of why they're here. Right. So that's the first thing. And the next thing is, how do I get them to get to the place that I can see where they can go, the potential of what's there. So it's like one step at a time, and continuing just to give them information. Right. And sometimes the information comes from on a spiritual level. Sometimes it comes in a way of where I can see where they're blocking their energy or blocking themselves from information. So I will mindfully coax them in a way of like, what about if we looked at it from this side and then give this a shot? I'm trying to use the things that I'm reading and the things that I'm learning and the trainings that I'm going to also be able to understand that space between me and them, because that's where the learning is, inside of that space. And and every day it's a practice for me. Every day it's a practice for me.
It must be really tiring.
I mean, it is. And at the end of the day, I notice that I have to be quiet for a while, because there's just been so much of this, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And when I leave that space, I always go, okay, so let me take a look at what that looked like for myself. Okay, that worked. Okay, that didn't really work. Okay, they didn't take that information. Okay, so, and then like, what do you do with that? Right? It's like like, let's try a different piece of the puzzle, but everybody in that space is important to me. And there's no mistake of why they're there. There's no mistake. And I always say that to them. You're here, and I know why you're here. So now what? Now what are we going to do with that? What's the next step?
That's sometimes so often that's the most powerful thing that you can say to someone, is reflect back to them. Like, I see you. Like, you don't see yourself, but I see you. And I know you had that conversation with me more than once, because I really struggled with imposter syndrome in school. And I feel like you kept me in school, really. Like, I felt like you were the only person who saw me, and especially on the days that I really didn't see myself. And that's all. You just need that one person to believe in you.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And I have students that I'm, quite close to, quite connected to. They're the ones that come seek me out. We have like long conversations, about things that are going on for them. And those connections are really the most important. And I still, obviously, I still have those connections, and one of the things I always say to them is like, stay on your path. Stay on your path. And when you need to veer off that path, you'll know when to veer. You'll know when to like have all the courage that you have to do that. Yeah. And I also think because the way that NYU kind of lives in the world, and the way that it has its own, the way it's seen is what I'll say. It's important for the students to know, just like what you said, is like, you made it here. That's a really big thing. And there wasn't like any confusion. There's no confusion. There's no confusion. You're here, and you deserve to be here. And you're right. I think that's really important. And I like to do that right when they get there, because it can be quite overwhelming, as you know. It can be a really overwhelming space to be in.
And probably now more than ever, the future is so uncertain, right? When you're an artist, the future feels uncertain, because you might only have a job, you might only be viable for a few years, right? And like, who knows if you're going to make it? Who knows if you're going to get quote unquote discovered? Because there's that myth of you need to have this big fancy job or have some amazing touring career in order to be successful, which we know isn't true. It's not the point of art. But there's so much wrapped up in it, especially when you're younger, about, well, what if I fail? What if I don't do what if I like squander these opportunities that I have?
Yeah.
And I think that we're in a collective moment of, what is the future? Like, everything feels uncertain in this time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also talk about that. Like, we have no idea. None of us have any idea, you know? And so what can you do in this moment? You can be in your practice. You can work through process. You can set your intention. You know, you can take the time to do one extra thing for yourself or for a friend or for somebody else. You know, so it's that. It's because we just have no idea. And, you know, it's interesting because in January, my father passed. And,
I'm so sorry.
yeah, thank you. He was 93 and he had dementia and he's an amazing being, like an absolutely amazing being in the world. And I have such great love and respect for him, and I always will. And at his funeral, which actually happened in February, I'm one of 10 children. And I don't know if you knew that, but I'm one of 10 children.
I did not know that you were. Where are you on the scale? In the 10? Where are you?
10.
Are you at the very end?
10.
You're the baby.
Yeah. So I'm one of 10, and so there was a service, and then my oldest brother spoke, and then I gave the eulogy. You know, which to write it was like, I can't even like, you know. And I was still writing it on the airplane, and like I was still trying to, you know, and that is something that I am really honestly most proud of, is like being able to write those words for this man who gave me everything. And not monetarily. I mean, we grew up quite lower class, but gave me everything, you know, and gave us all the opportunities that we could possibly do the things that we wanted to do. So, you know, and since he passed, I noticed that I bring him into the studio with me much more than I did in the past, because it's that sort of hope that he gave me in my life. That's what I also want to pass on. You know, it's like, we have no clue, you know, and as many times as he said that, you know, about keeping my faith and keeping, you know, connected to, you know, why I have this purpose, you know, all of that. Mostly I learned that from him, you know, and then you go away from it, you come back to it. But now it's, you know, really the past, I'd say, good 20 years where I like, no, these are the things I need to guide my life with.
Wow. What an amazing legacy that you continue on.
Yeah. Thank you. And what's interesting is that he was a teacher. He was a history teacher, but because he had all these kids, which was insane, like insane, right?
Your Italian family sounds like my Italian family. Yeah.
So he couldn't support himself on being a teacher. And so he always wanted me to be a teacher. And I remember thinking, you know, back when I was like performing, and I don't want to be, I'm a terror, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't, you know, and it's like, it's just so interesting. It's like, oh yeah, well, universe. Yeah. So here it goes. But yeah, and I do find that there are things that I share with my students that they don't know it comes from him, but things that they're in your cellular being, you know, it's like the things that your mom said to you and, you know, whatever. So.
Yeah. And when it comes out of your mouth, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. I know that deep inside some aspect of me, element of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
You never know. My partner has brain cancer, and he's great and healthy now, but he was diagnosed at 33 with stage 4 brain cancer. And that's when we started dating around that time. And he still has a tumor in his head, but everyone lives in uncertainty. Yeah. We all are living in uncertainty. We talk about this a lot because we have to deal with it maybe a little bit more front and center than other people, but it's always there. Uncertainty is always there. Nothing is promised to us other than that this road will come to an end at some point. And so we're just trying to choose the better story.
Yes.
Like, what's the better story?
Yes.
And what do I get to choose, right? There are many things that I don't have control over, but I do get to choose how I want to tell my story and how I want to remember my story. So we think about that and talk about that a lot. And I feel like that's part of what you teach your students, right? Is like, how am I doing and being in the world? What is my story and legacy going to be? And like, I have all this power and choice inside of me. Like, every movement is a choice, right?
That's right. That's right.
Every class it's all about choice making. So like, well, what are you going to choose?
Yeah. That is it. Oh my gosh. I say that all the time. Baby. I am dying.
I listened when you talked.
I mean, like, I'm going to like cry. I mean, and I do. It's like the choices, right? And also, I also talk to them a lot about, you know, the doing of the everyday, you know, it's like remote, right? And so the walking into the dance class every day, you know, it gets wearing on them. And because they don't quite have, they're not quite there yet of understanding the importance of it. So it's like, don't take advantage of that moment. There are going to be days you're just not into it. And I actually ask them to embrace those days. That's fine. Don't be into it. Just be in the next. And let's see where we go from there.
Yeah.
Because there are days you just don't feel like it. And that is real. And that's okay. But then what? Then what are we going to do with that? You know, if you're really, and I always say to them, when I say like, how are we doing? What's going on? The thing they're not allowed to say is I'm tired. I don't want to know that. What other things can you tell me? Maybe you're fatigued today. Maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Maybe you had a big exam last night. Okay, so let's work from that place. Let's work from that place where, so it doesn't consume you, but then you work from where you are. Let's start from where we are right now. Yeah. And that could be, I'd rather be home sleeping. Okay. Let's start from there then. I'm fine with that.
Right. You do. That's not hurting my feelings. It's all good. Like, that's where you're at. That's where you're at. That's all about you, my friend. That has nothing to do with me.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what I feel like we said, getting in an X and like getting into the body, right? Feeling into the body. I never, until I was in your class, because I had, when I first went to NYU, I had Gus as my first rotation of modern dance, which was, as wonderful as Gus was, horrifying. I cried after every single class because he didn't demonstrate. He just would like do this with his hands and be like, okay, do the combination. And I'm sure you remember Hollis. Hollis was in my class, and he would do it, and I'd be like, how are you doing this? Like, he just moved his hands. That's not a dance move. I need ballet terms. Like, what are you talking about? I felt like I was like taking crazy pills or something. And then you were my next rotation, and you're like, let's lay in an X. And I was like, why are we laying on the ground? This is a dance class. Like, what's going on here?
I know. I think about that too.
Just like, what? But laying down, and I feel like you must have said something like, you know, feel into what your body's telling you, and maybe like, is there any pain? And all of a sudden I felt this like shooting pain in my body that I recognized had been there for so long that I just like had built a block around, right? Of like, I'm never allowed to feel this thing or go to the root of it or explore what it is beyond like, that's painful and I'm just not going to think about it. And regarding the, you know, we're not going to say I'm tired. It's because it's almost like you build this wall of like, I'm just tired. I don't want to like dive into what is there. And the juice is what's there. Like that is the important information. And that's what we need to like go deeper within ourselves for. We can find that in our bodies or just by like asking ourselves the question maybe once more with feeling, you know?
Yeah. Say it with feeling. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're just fantastic, and I'm so grateful.
I hope I haven't like effusively embarrassed you because
no.
I just love you so much, and you really are a life changer. And I don't know how often you hear it because I know you stay in touch with so many of your students because so many people love you, but you really do change people's lives for the better. I wouldn't be sitting where I am today if it weren't for you. I genuinely can say that. And I'm just so grateful. And I couldn't have I knew that you made an impact on me when I was in school, but it's like taken even this long to brew and be like, oh no, she changed my life completely and totally. So thank you for just being yourself and for modeling what the practice looks like and like, you know, being impeccable with your own word, but by doing it alongside of us, you know, and like muddling through it and not always having the right answers either, or not having the words either. It's so it's so human and important.
Yes. That is exactly it. It. I'm just standing right alongside you. Yeah. So.
I love you.
I love you. I'm touched. I'm so touched by your words. And I just, you know, you'll always be in my life. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Well, I am so grateful that you that you were down to hop on this call with me and record this podcast.
Yeah.
Where can people find you other than at the Tisch school in your mask telling people to lay in X's?
Well, I have a website, PamelaPietro.com. I'm on Instagram, Pamela.Pietro. I'm also on Facebook. What else? You can email me anytime. Yeah. You can ask Mimi. She knows where to find me. So, yeah.
Yes.
And also, like, that whole think tank dreaming thing, it's like, I'm so glad that you asked me because I got to put that out in the universe even more so. So, thank you.
Yep. Now the wheels are in motion. Now you just have to be prepared for when it comes.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's so good to talk to you. I'll
too.
let you go on with the rest of your day, but I love you so much.
Same.
And we'll talk soon.
Same. Much love, much respect. Appreciate you.
All right. And that is our episode. Like I mentioned, if you work at a think tank or an incubator, hit Pam up. You would be so lucky to have her. You would be #blessed to have her. You can find Pam on all the socials. We'll put some links to where to learn more about her and her work in the show notes. But I can't wait to hear what you thought of this episode. It really made me feel like I felt like a little bit of a teenager again, like talking to my teacher, and I just love and adore her so much. I'd love to hear about your favorite teachers and what they left you, the messages that they left with you that have stayed with you throughout your life. So if you want to text that to us or tag us on Instagram at Holisticism with this podcast and maybe with one of your favorite teachers, I would love to meet them and learn more about them. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast and tuning in to Holisticism. We love you and appreciate you, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.